On the line with us, Mark Potok, the senior fellow at the Southern Poverty Law Center, editor-in-chief of the Southern Poverty Law Center's quarterly journal, The Intelligence Report, and its investigative reports. SPLcenter.org is the website, and you can tweet at SPL Center. Mark, welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom. Pleasure to be back.
It's great to have you on. I have been watching with some dismay. Now, I was going to say amazement, but it's not quite. This rising trend of white supremacists and white nationalists coming out and aggressively supporting Donald Trump. And I noted last week, I think I talked about it on the air, that your organization had identified the Republican Party, at least in its current incarnation with Trump at the head of it, as a possible hate group or as a hate group. I'm curious your thoughts on both those issues.
Well, no, we didn't list the Republican Party as a hate group, but we certainly did point out in analyzing what's happened on the radical right in American society over the last year, the incredible and nearly unprecedented pouring of real vitriolic poison into the political mainstream that we've seen during the Republican primaries. So, you know, that is certainly true. And maybe I'm like you. I've been a bit amazed by just how far it's gone. I mean, Donald Trump's claim that he has no idea who David Duke is, that he doesn't really know anything about the Klan, doesn't know if it's a good group or a bad group. He'll have to do some research and get back to us on that. Is just unbelievable and, in fact, patently false. We know perfectly well that Donald Trump knows who David Duke was. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump decided not to run on the Reform Party ticket in the year 2000 because Duke would have been his running mate. He called him a neo-Nazi and a Klansman at the time. And those were accurate descriptors, but apparently Trump has forgotten them.
Yeah. Well, could it be more like, you know, Reagan's first official campaign speech after the Republican convention in 1980 was down near Philadelphia, Mississippi, where the three civil rights workers, Cheney, Schwimmer, and Goodman, were murdered. And he talked about states' rights. But, you know, if had anybody said, you know, are you, you know, is this a racist shout out? Reagan would have said, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, isn't his I don't know what you're talking about really in and of itself the ultimate racist shout out, the dog whistle?
Yes. I think it is. I think it's extremely lightly coded speech that is aimed at the constituency that Donald Trump and the Ku Klux Klan share. And that is certain portions of the kind of disenchanted working and lower middle class in this country, white middle class, I should say. Right. You know, there's a hell of a lot of anger out there over the way our society is changing, both demographically and culturally, as well as the financial strains and so on. So that is what Trump is plugging into, and he seems to be doing it utterly without shame. You know, it's really quite a spectacle.
Yeah, it's not quite George Wallace, but it's damn close.
It's the closest thing since Wallace. You know, you think of other heroes in the kind of mainstream political spectrum to the radical right in the last several years, and we're talking about Pat Buchanan and Ron Paul, and that's kind of what it's limited to. Right. And yet neither Pat Buchanan nor Ron Paul has made the kinds of statements really that Trump has made. You know, Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers. You know, Muslims are so vile they shouldn't be in the country at all, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. What are you noting? I mean, you guys maintain metrics on this stuff. You measure these things. You keep track of these groups. What has happened as a consequence of our first African-American president? How has that changed the landscape of white nationalism and white supremacy, or white supremacist groups? And then phase two of that question, how has the rise of Donald Trump changed that? I'm assuming it's building on it, but what's going on here?
Well, the short story is there's been an absolutely enormous growth of groups on the radical right, both hate groups and so-called militia groups or patriot groups that, as you suggested in your question, coincide precisely with the first election of Barack Obama as our first black president in the fall of 2008. So that really set off a bit of a maelstrom. Of course, at the very same time, we had the economy go south in a very big way. In any case, you know, for instance, just to give a sense, the number of so-called patriot groups, these anti-government groups, expanded by more than 800% in the 4 years after Obama was elected. Wow. How is Trump playing into all of this? Certainly, he is adding to the willingness of people to voice their anger and even to engage, I think, in criminal hate violence. We saw that very clearly, for instance, very shortly after Trump gave his inaugural speech in this campaign, denouncing Mexicans as rapists and so on. It was just a few weeks after that that a Latino man was beaten up very badly by two white men, brothers, in Boston with steel pipes. And when they were arrested, they actually cited Donald Trump to the arresting officers. So that we're seeing. I mean, when somebody like Trump says, Mexicans and Muslims are these terrible things, that essentially paves the way for the more thuggish elements in our society to go out there and act.
And his constant proclamation of fealty to the police in the United States, is that not basically his way of pushing back against Black Lives Matter and saying,
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And when he talked up police in that way, he was responding specifically to a question about whether he supported Black Lives Matter. And his response, boiled down to police lives matter. Right. We ought to give the police more power. There's no discussion at all of any measures that might be taken to limit the violence inflicted on black men and so on by police. So really, yes, I think that Trump knows what he's doing. As I say, the language is just barely coded. You hardly have to pay attention to it.
Now, we saw in the 1930s in Europe in the United States for that matter, the Bund was huge here, but how an economic crisis can provoke both left and right extremes coming out of the woodwork in big numbers, and the right in particular, when they come out, tend to be violent. It seems to me that Trump is not Hitler, in that Hitler actually had a vision of 1,000 years of peace. This was the Third Reich. He was building this Vatican at Wewelsburg. He was expansive. He was out, attacking other countries and things. Mussolini, I guess, once the war started, took a couple of countries in North Africa, but was more of a, I'm the business guy, I'm going to make the trains run. Do you see, in your mind, I know you're a student of history, parallels between Franco, Mussolini, Hitler, and Trump? It seems to me that Hitler's probably the least strong argument, but certainly, or for that matter, Berlusconi. We got a minute left, Mark.
Let me just say that, a bad economy, even a very bad economy, certainly does not always lead to the situation you're describing, but it obviously did in the 30s.
Right.
I think that Trump, who's to say, what goes on in the man's brain, but he postures in a kind of fascist way, in the sense that he is very much an authoritarian figure, right? He's going to fix the problems, and he don't want to listen to any questions about how. He's going to build that wall, and it's going to be terrific, and the Mexicans are going to pay for it. And that's all we need to know, us poor hapless people down here, with the masses. So I think in that sense, he is reminiscent of fascist figures. Don't worry about a thing. I'm going to take care of it all. It'll be terrific.
Yeah. And there's a large audience for that message. And when the guy who is the leader and essentially moral force of the party says, I want to punch a protester in the face, isn't that just kind of giving license to all the other protesters? Yeah. Mark, I'm sorry. Once the music starts, it kills off the Skype audio. But so I got to wrap it up here. And we hit the break anyway. But Mark Potok, a senior fellow at the Southern Poverty Law Center, splcenter.org, and at SPL Center. Mark, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.